Hey, what's up, man?
What up, dude? How you doing?
Doing good. Just trying to learn, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, my bad about yesterday as well. Didn't realize until like,
Oh,
fif-
dude, don't worry.
yeah.
It's totally fine.
But yeah. I guess we can just jump right into it. Let me kind of know where you're at and how everything's. I guess what you kind of you want to focus on and stuff like that.
Okay. Well, so I've done your new um bronze to GM this new time around with Protoss,
Okay.
and things are really kind of clicking for me. Like I feel like I'm doing the build pretty decently. I'm in platinum. I'm in platinum 2 to 1. Um,
Okay.
and so I feel like I'm getting stronger, but my macro, I mean, like you always say, macro is kind of the issue before diamond anyway. So I feel like if you can just look at 2 replays I have, there is one thing, and I know that you don't recommend it, but hear me out
Sure.
because I think I
Okay.
make a good point.
Okay.
You recommend not doing multiple matchups. But
If you want to, you can.
I have a I have a really good Terran one and a really good Protoss one. And I think that they're both really good representations of how P versus T goes and also how P versus P goes, where P versus P is like a coin toss. And like if Mercury's in retrograde, you can win.
Yeah.
And like it just seems to like be just really unorthodox and awkward. And then Terran was a little bit different. But I was hoping maybe we could look at those two
Sure.
and you could just really tell me about things you're seeing that make it look like I'm going if it's like it's too slow
All right. No worries.
or what I'm my decision making.
Sounds good. I would say we can definitely focus on multiple matchups, especially if it's. I mean, I would say you're probably gonna miss a lot of shit I'm gonna say, but as long as I stream the lesson and upload it for you, you can always go back and watch. And if you actually, if I say so many things at once and half of it goes in and out of your ear, and you're like, oh, I don't remember any of it, you can always go back and watch the VOD, and it's all G. But if this was like a private lesson, I'd be like, bro, you probably should focus on one because there's no recording here. Um,
Sure,
so
sure.
so yeah, no, you're totally fine doing two, and we can definitely look at both for you and talk, and I
Okay,
can break down what I think is going wrong for you.
okay,
And yeah, and I mean, as always, as I say with everybody, you're more than welcome to as well ask me any question at any point in time, even if that means you have to interrupt me and stop me from just be like, I gotta ask it now before I forget.
okay.
You can always do that,
All
and
right,
I don't mind.
absolutely.
All right, so I guess there's two ways you can do this. You probably it's probably the new way I've been doing this because it'll be easier for you to see what I'm looking at. You can just
Okay,
if you can just grab your replays and drop them over to me in Discord, and then I can stream my Discord to you. So when you watch the VOD later on YouTube, you'll see my perspective on Twitch, and then it's just like a normal VOD from YouTube. But if you right now you can't really see that without a little bit of stream delay because it's just how it is. But if you watch it through
okay,
Discord, there's no delay, and it's a direct one-on-one for me and you on Discord, and you can see my screen's perspective. So it's like watching it on YouTube, but no, there's no vibe camera on there and stuff like that. Would you like to do that instead?
okay. Yeah, let's do whatever that
Okay.
option was.
So all it is
Yeah.
drop replays. The two replays you want me to look at, drop them in the chat we have in Discord right now between the two of us, and then I'll open it up
Okay.
and I'll share you my screen on StarCraft, so you can see what I'm looking
Do,
at.
do I just have to go through like StarCraft 2 replay and get like the
So
hyperlink and then do it
all
there
all,
that way?
all you got to do. Did you title the replays
Okay.
anything?
No.
Okay, so I would say go to your replay inside StarCraft and then title it something. Uh,
I
then
titled the two.
yeah, just like rename it to something easy to find, and then you could just
Okay.
go back to your computer and just find the file called whatever you named it, and it'll be super easy peasy.
Okay. Let's see here.
And if you want to as well, we could do it the traditional way we used to do it, which is you could just invite me to a party and we could just watch it together, and I could explain what I'm looking at
I
as
mean,
well.
I mean, I really like your. I think the other one seems like that's a.
It's you'll see my perspective because a lot of times I always try to explain. So right now I'm looking at the natural and your natural, and what we see here is I always try to preface like that, but sometimes people are like, "Wait, what are you looking at right now?" So if you actually see my screen, you never have to ask that question.
Sure. Okay, deal. Let's do that then. I'm renaming them right now.
Okay, no worries.
Okay. now where do I go?
Now
Sorry, I'm
just
not really like
now go back.
technology literate.
No, you're totally fine, dude. Just go to your desktop now and like hit like the Windows
Okay.
key or something and just type. Literally start typing in the search of like if you get control escape, you can type in like Vibe replay or whatever you typed it.
Okay.
And then once if you see it in there and like it's like a green StarCraft 2 replay file, you can right click it and hit show file location.
Okay. Let me see what I can do. Sad because I'm like I'm 28, but it's like an old man.
No, you're all good, man. Don't
Buttons
worry.
trying to figure shit out over here.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Trying to figure shit
It's
out.
sad.
You're all good.
All
Dude.
right. No, I don't want to Google portal vein thrombosis. What the hell?
Are you in the browser right now?
Yeah, I'm in the little. I hit the little button, and I'm in the, like the little type to search here.
So it's not off the browser. It's off your computer itself. So if you just like, for instance, if you just hit Control Escape, you see how like your bottom left like task manager pops up.
Ooh, okay, I found it.
Okay,
I found it.
Okay.
Okay, so now what you say you want me to do? Open file
Yeah,
location?
yeah. Show file location, and then you can just drag and drop it into the Discord channel we have right here.
Okay. In the Discord?
Yep. Just drag. Just literally, it'll copy it. It won't actually just delete the replay. So you'll still have your own copy, but it'll just it'll actually give me a copy as well.
Okay. Get this going. All right.
Just to make sure you know, the place you're dropping it is like there. Oh, you got it. Okay, perfect. That's perfect. That's exactly it.
Okay.
So now, all I do is I open it up.
Okay.
And I will now share you my screen on StarCraft, and now you can hit like I might just automatically do it since we're in a private call. Like for instance, right now, do you see my screen on StarCraft?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Now you're good to go, and now you can see my perspective and stuff like that. So easy peasy.
Sweet. Okay. Oh, okay. That's cool.
Yeah. So it's like exactly point for point too. There's no delay here. And you have you know, and again, but you'll see my perspective, so it's not like I'm not gonna be like, so we're looking at the Terran's natural right now, blah blah blah, whatever.
Right, and then be okay. Will I be able to see this on YouTube as well?
Yeah.
Like just like this.
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Because well, on YouTube, the only difference will be is you'll see my face on there as well, because it's actually coming from my stream instead of from the private Discord share screen. But it's all the visuals are gonna be exactly the same, matched with like the voice audio and stuff like that. Okay. So. You have just generalized. You're trying to do beta GM. You're doing platinum level beta, like platinum level of it, and you're just trying to figure out what's going wrong. So we can definitely look at what's going wrong for you.
Doing the mineral heavy, gas late, that type of stuff. Yada yada.
Yep. Yo, Vertex, thank you very much for the 7, dude. Much love.
7 months, baby.
Okay. So I'm not gonna worry too much about where you're building buildings right now, because again, in this matchup, it's fine. I would say if you want my
you want it behind the mineral line, right?
Yeah, exactly.
For the Reaper.
Yep. That's the only thing I'd say different. Otherwise, you're good.
Okay.
Okay, Chrono Boost is, or your Chrono Boost was good. Your gas is super late though. So like what you want to go for is when you throw down your gate. Your gateway's great, super good gateway.
Okay.
When's B2G?
No B2G today, guys. I'm coaching all day. Sorry. So like right about now, when you have this probe started, this is perfect. Also, thank you, Doompoop, for the bits. When you have this probe started, what you want to go for from here is you want to save your next 75 minerals to then take your gas with. And once you take your gas, you start another probe again. So you chrono boost here, and you make another probe, and we'll see how long you wait to take your gas. Your gas isn't that late; it's not that bad. Only like 2-3 seconds late in your gas. It's not the worst, but you definitely could take it a little bit faster. But it's still, I would say that's okay. I actually thought you were gonna wait longer to take it than that. So that's not your major problem yet. It's still okay. Probe timing to go to your natural is nice. Taking your nexus. Nice. You actually stop to make your core. This is a higher level. No problem with me at all. No problem at all. That's I like this better, honestly. The higher you get, the more likely I'm gonna do this as well. In my own series. So good shit so far. Your macro mostly is like, I would say it's like I would say there's only 2 problems with the macro that are both somewhat minor. One is your gas was delayed just by a couple seconds. That's like If like
Okay.
for instance, if you were getting graded at like 100% so far, you're already at like a 97% because of that, or like a 98. Still really close to maxed out though, and you're not stacking your close patches right away. From what I saw, like for instance, this close patch still only has 1 the entire time.
Okay.
So that's like another like maybe like 4% taken off right there for because that
That's
could
something
be
I need to
better.
focus on right now, you think?
Well, because the only thing is, I say that. What else are you doing at that point in the game? You're literally doing nothing. There's nothing else.
That's valid.
Yeah, like it's not like, oh, well, you're gonna sacrifice your scouting or your macro. You literally do nothing
Sure.
for the first like 30 seconds. You just sit there. So you definitely could fix that, and it would be at no cost. Okay, your build order is a bit fucked up. So what I would say now is, or I'm just kidding. Sorry, I for some reason thought you didn't build a Nexus. You're good. You're good. Forget I said that. You're good. You're good.
All right.
Okay, let's look at your so your build's fine for the most part. Now let's look at your probe. Okay, so right there. This is I'm gonna ask you to how to like. I want you to really quickly tell me what you think you see from this right here. What do you feel like you see?
Well, I feel like it's standard. I feel like he's not blocking me off, so nothing crazy's happening. He expanded, so it doesn't look like it's going to be early aggression. I could have went in the base more and seen if he would have maybe taken like a double gas. From what I saw, I was just like, okay, it looks like he's going to play standard.
Okay, so I would say somewhat of a decent read right there, but there's a lot to this that I want to explain this to you, and this is how I'm going to also tell people to scout in the future once we get higher and beta gym stuff. But look at your Nexus compared to his command center. It's like probably like 15-20% of the way done. What's your Nexus look like? It's just started, so I mean, his command center is slightly faster than your Nexus. Now let's look at the gateway to the racks. His racks is also like maybe like 5 to somewhere between like 5 and 10% of the way in. It's very, very early. It's in the deep red still. What's your gateway? It's already done.
What's done?
So
okay.
This is a big tell for you. That tells you this dude's like if this did not exist, and this did exist, I'd be like, there's multiple racks right now. Maybe they're proxied as well. Like maybe there's 2 racks right there. And then suddenly, like, this Rax is done. Because why would this Rax be so fucking late compared to yours?
Sure.
But you could kind of chalk this up to the fact that because his Rax is so late, and because his command center is faster than your Nexus by a little bit, maybe like it obviously means he went command center before Rax. But maybe this ultimately just means at this point in the game, it's still really early. He just went for a command center first into a Rax follow up. So every type of aggression he can do to you now is just delayed. So things like this, if you wanted to really read something like this and go, how can I react in the way that would give me the most benefit here? If you went for a chrono boosted gateway unit, it should automatically go attack him now. And the reason why that is because if he has late units, you should, punish that because he's being greedier than normal. Or what you can do in a greedy way could be something like, okay, well, if he went command center first, what if I just don't chrono boost my Stalker at all because I'm not afraid of a Reaper or anything now? And what if I just chrono boost my probes only? I don't ever chrono boost the gateway. I just chrono boost probe because how can he punish that? He can't because his barracks is literally started.
Are these things you think? Sorry,
okay.
I didn't mean to cut you off. Are these things you think are available at Plat? Like I know that you usually hammer home like focus on build.
So
but, like,
are
do you think I'm able to do that?
You're watching the 2019 series, right? Because you're watching the Platinum?
The newest one.
Okay, so I'm definitely going to talk more about scouting and Platinum a lot more this time around.
Okay. Okay.
And this is like all I want you to think about is I want you to think about how you compare your build to his build. And when you get to his base, you just already know where your build's at, right? Because your build is the same every game, like your opener at least. So it's not going to be like a curveball every time being like, well, what did I do this time? So you always know when your probe gets to your opponent's base, your gateway is like just finishing and your Nexus is just starting. And that's how your build's always going to go. So if anyone's going to do a build similar to you, you should see a Rax that's just now finishing. And you should see a command center that just started to be the same thing as you. And then you would know, okay, he's doing the same build as me. But seeing that how his build is deviated from what your build is, you know something went different here. And you can go, oh, well, his command center is deeper along. So this is actually CC first. And you don't have to do an aggressive reaction, but you can do some type of a reaction to go, okay, well, I could now do something like just chrono boost my probes constantly and make faster economy. Doesn't have to be super extreme, just make more economy. And I would say, honestly,
Sure.
if you really think about it too, it shouldn't make any sense that this guy has double gas right now. Because, again, if you think about it like that, you go, oh, he went CC first. So if the guy went
Oh, that's
CC
valid.
first and then he went barracks, he could not have that with, like, because what if you,
Doesn't have
for
enough
instance,
resources.
yeah, what if you went double gas before you even took a gateway or a nexus? Like, you would not be able to
Right, like,
afford
throw
your
it
gateway
off.
or nexus at all right now because you barely afforded it as it is.
Sure.
So he can't have gas right now because this is way too much minerals. So if you think about it like that, it already you don't even have to scout in the main to know that he doesn't have a gas. And if he does have a gas,
Okay.
he probably just started it with the racks. So it's under construction. Like one gas could start under construction right now, because there's no way he could take gas
Okay.
before this and be able to afford this.
Okay.
So again, it's all just comparing your build to their build, and you don't have to go crazy with it. Like you've scouted it already, you know what his opener is, and now you just saw, like what you're really looking for is this build going to be one of three things? Is it going to be really aggressive? Is it going to be standard, which standard also is another word for safe, or is it going to be really greedy? And
Okay.
you've just confirmed it's greedy, because he is delaying military to increase economy. So you can.
Okay.
And the way the game goes is it's like a 3-round cycle. Just so you know, greed beats safe, but loses to aggression. Generally speaking, then safe
Hmm.
beats aggression, but loses to greed. And then finally, aggression beats greed, but again loses to safe.
Just to say.
And the reason why that is because if you're aggressive versus someone who's greedy, they're not going to have anything. That's why I said you could attack him if you wanted to, if you still wanted a Chrono Booster Stalker here or something like that. You could just attack him, and he'll have late units, so he'll probably take a lot of damage to it. Meanwhile, if you wanted to see someone playing greedy and you want to match their greed with greed, that's you're keeping their game in a safe term for you, where you're like, okay, well, we're both greedy now, so neither one of us can attack each other. We're both playing greedy, so the game is what it is. It's fine. It kind of stabilizes. And yeah, that's how you can play it out. But if, for instance, if you just play safe now though, and he plays greedy, you're falling behind. Like you are actually putting yourself into a negative early game. So
What would you say your bronze to GM series is? Like greedy with a side of safe?
it's definitely a mix between greed and safe.
Okay. Because so for example, if I see this, would I get my third down at 4 minutes, or should I go for earlier? Because I know I could probably take it because he has less army.
So I would say your third going down in 4 minutes is already greed as it is, and
Okay.
that it doesn't need to change really. Like, I mean, if you really wanted to go, you know what, I'm just not going to make any gateway units. I'm going to go for another Nexus right now. That is a super specific reaction, and I would not say that that's something that's required. It's just something that, I mean, if you did think, like, I want you to know that if you think about it that way, though, it would actually work. You could do that and be like, I'll just go fast double expand because you went to command center first. And you could try to make it
Those
work
the
like
types
that.
of things that would get me to diamond, or do you think it
It-
doesn't need to be as
I just want you to be able to
intense
read
as
it.
that?
I just want you to be able to read a game. It's not like
Yeah.
that alone is like that's your ticket to diamond, but that's being able to think about how you read a game, and because I want you to look at someone's base and go, I know what this means, rather than going,
Okay.
what should I do with my build? Oh yeah, the same thing I do every game.
Right.
Because if you do the same thing every game, you're gonna have strengths and weaknesses, and sometimes that might actually when you win or lose a game for you based on like how your build pairs against their build, and you might not know why that is. So at least now you're like, if you start to understand, okay, how does the opener go for both players, you'll start having more of an idea. And like for instance, I'll give you one more thing really fast. For instance, if your probe right now was attacking the SCV on the command center, and you were, I'm not saying you have to do that, but if you were, it would be so fucking annoying for Terran, because he has no.
You can stop it with a marine.
Exactly, he has no barracks unit coming anytime soon, and if you keep delaying SCV after SCV after SCV by like if you were at Masters Protoss right now and you saw this. Command center first on the low ground, really far away from the mineral line, and you don't even have a rack. So it just started now. I'm gonna fucking cuck your SCV for like the next 50 seconds because I'm gonna make you constantly like have to chase me. I'll lose my shields, run away, shields regenerate, go back in, and you just do like literally like 80 damage to a bunch of SCVs and maybe even kill some of them. But
the goal is to do that while doing exactly what not exactly, but the goal is to do that while doing the bronze GM still, like making your,
I mean, well, the bronze GM,
this.
literally, like the big thing about bronze GM is just the philosophy is you just keep producing out of your buildings. Like you have an economy that makes sense. Like you don't do a gas build and then not all in somebody. Like that makes no sense. So if you're going to go for expansions, you definitely want to do a mineral focus, which is great. And then you just keep trying to produce out of your buildings. Like, you don't let your buildings go idle. Like, for instance,
Right.
let me see this for a second. Like, I'm going to look at your build for one more second here. So you chrono boost the gateway, you chrono boosted the Nexus. And then I would say you built that second gateway way too fast. Because you built that second
Really?
yeah, you built that second gateway before your sentry even started. Like it was like right at this about the same exact time as it started. And what happened? Look at your Nexus as the result of this. Watch your Nexus because you do this. So you have a stalker and you already made a sentry in the Nexus or in the gateway. Now look at your money. You have 140 minerals. Look at your Nexus. You only have one probe in production. And what do you prioritize? You make the gate. You make the gate right now. So now your Nexus is idle with a chrono. And then you could make a probe right in now. You make it right after, but that was like things like that. Like the point of the second gateway is to finish at the same time as the warp gate upgrade. And you're gonna start. You're gonna really use your second gateway to warp in units. So think about it like this: if a stalker takes 30 seconds to make, and warp gate takes 100 seconds to make, and a gateway itself takes 46 seconds to build, that means that a stalker, if you make a stalker directly out of a gateway, the second the gateway is done, you can make a stalker out of that gateway at 76 seconds after production of the start of the gateway. And you're starting, like, I mean, that is close to what you have right now because you prioritized it so fast. But I don't think you'll be able to afford it and also afford everything else. So, generally speaking, what I'm trying to say here is it's okay if you make your gateway, and this alleviates all your money to do all your probe stuff, your pylon stuff. Because look at your supply as well. You're about to supply block. I mean, your Nexus is about to finish, but that's just fine. That's okay. I can't really judge you on the supply block because the Nexus is almost done. But either way, the point I'm trying to make here is again, the second gateway is supposed to be paired with warp gate, not with making units before warp gate, because you literally can't afford that. It's way too much, way too fast. Your money's gonna be stretched super thin, which is why you already couldn't make a probe for a second there. But if we have a gateway that's 46 seconds and a core upgrade that's 100, it means that as long as your gateway is made right before 54 seconds into your core upgrade, you're still gonna have warp gate right away, and then you're gonna be good to go. And generally speaking, the window of really when you make your gateway, your second gateway, is gonna be anywhere between like 40 to 50 seconds usually, because you make your second gateway when you can afford it, when your sentry is like halfway into production, or like 2/3 of the way in production, because that's when you'll throw down.
So
your
you do it when you can afford basically the robo as
and
well,
the gateway,
right?
yeah, exactly.
I take it fat. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because now, like, we'll fast forward this really fast and let's watch your gateway. And what does your gateway actually do? Like, you made your robo, and your gateway sits there, and you start making a unit. You started and here's the crazy thing, right? You started a unit, and warp gate's gonna finish during the time you make the unit. And now you're actually gonna be missing time here. So watch, warp gate's now done right now, and your unit still has another 12 seconds to build. Now the crazy thing about it too is when your gateway, your warp gate finishes and it turns from a gateway to a warp gate, your stalker cooldown lowers than what the build time is. So a build time of a stalker is 30 seconds on a standard gateway, but when you go to a warp gate, the cooldown is exactly. So you actually get a faster round repeatedly of stalkers. So now that if you delay the warp gate by continuously building a stalker inside of it, like you're not only delaying the first stalker, but if you ever queue up stalkers behind this, you're delaying all of your stalkers behind that, because you're wasting that off time of every stalker from then on, which is 7 seconds off.
Right.
I mean, you do make warp gates after that, but now here's the thing, right? Let's look at your robo. When did your robo finish? Your robo finished at 3 minutes and like 46 seconds, basically, right here. And then let's see how much idle from 346. What gets built? Like, when do we start an immortal finally? And an immortal is how you're not gonna. Immortal is like super important to make your early game for Protoss. So I just want to see when you start immortal.
I take my third instead.
Okay. And well, the thing is, you'd be able to afford immortal and a third if you didn't take your second gateway so fast and add in like disrupt your probes at all, and also add in extra stalker cost when you didn't need it at that early stage, because it's just up and down, right? We're talking like the whole concept of beta GM is if your building has downtime, it means you took your building too fast. That's all it means.
Oh.
So you're trying to find that sweet spot where your building has very little downtime, if any at all. And if you're
Okay.
like if you're Robo, it was made at 3 minutes and 46 seconds, and you started an Immortal at 4 minutes and 41. Your Robo was in about a minute, basically, just about a minute of your Robo. All you made was an Observer, which is 1/3 production time. So
Okay.
it just fucks up the build for you, hardcore, and you know, not ideal, I would say. So again, if we back it up to the point of when you go for the second gateway for your Stalker, again, just delay it. Let your second gateway be a warp gate upgrade thingy. And here's the priority of what you should make, okay? This is the priority of what you should make.
Okay.
Number 1 is probes and probes related things. So probe, nexus, and pylon. Those are probe and probe related things that allow your probes to keep being made. Secondly, the second thing you should do as a follow up to like, okay, what should I always prioritize after probes? You should definitely prioritize your Robo. Just in general. Because if you don't prioritize, like your Robo is your like a big power unit. The only time this doesn't make sense is if your scout and with your first probe goes, oh, he's going for like fucking fast liberators, or he's going for a banshee rush or a battlecruiser. Then you can switch Robo with Stalker because Stalker is more important because it hits air units. But in general, your Immortal should be your priority, second priority, and then your final third priority should be your gateways.
So you say take Robo first, then the gateway.
So no, that's not what I. Like, you can take it in any order you want. You could take Robo Gateway, or you can take Gateway Robo. But what I mean is producing out of the building. So like, when you're if you have a priority of what to build, and you go, okay, well I have 460 minerals in the bank right now, and I can't afford everything right this second, but I can start producing out of stuff. What am I going to do? Probe,
Immortal,
then Stalker. You don't want to go Stalker first, then Immortal, then Probe, or anything out of that order. You want to definitely make sure you're going Probe first, then Immortal, then Stalker. And the reason why is because one Immortal is worth more value in terms of, because 2 Stalkers and 1 Immortal are the same exact supply, and they're the same exact gas cost. The only difference is an Immortal is only 25 more minerals than 2 Stalkers, but 1 Immortal scales way better than 2 Stalker. It's worth like 3 or maybe 4 Stalkers.
Yeah, you said in the video it was like 4. Yeah, you showed it, and I'm like, oh, that's
impressive. It's fucking insanely strong. It attacks faster. It hits way harder. It's way tankier. It's a god unit. It's so fucking good, and that's why you should prioritize it over Stalker early game. You'll get to a point as well where like it's gonna be super close either way, right? Because again, the goal is we're not gonna make gateways to be like, well, we're not using these fucking like 50% of the time. We're going to be using them as much as possible, which is ideally like 80 or 90% plus, or even better, like almost 100 if we're super crisp about how we're building everything. But yeah, again, prioritizing the gate this fast, it just is going to mess everything up for you, right? So definitely delaying that for a moment will be great because, like, for instance, look at your natural again. Like talking about that just as well. So we'll go back. These are huge things for the early game. So your first Nexus has nothing being produced. Now let's look at your natural Nexus for a second. So now finally your Nexus gains production again after. Now look at your natural. Nothing's being produced. Nothing's being produced. Now finally something produces. That was like probably 10 seconds of no time right there because we're on a faster replay speed here. And then what happens after you build your probe? Nothing being produced. Nothing being produced. There we go. That was probably another like 7 seconds, 6 seconds. But that was with the chrono boost. So that's a lot.
This is all because of that gateway.
I would say no to that question. And it's not all like, only the gateway is why you fucked up your build. There's a couple things. One of the first things is, I mean, you could have chrono boosted your probes quicker instead of because here's the thing, right? Think about it like this. You scouted someone who went for command center first. So you could have, instead of chrono boosting your gateway, which causes more cost in your gateway faster, you could have chrono boosted your Nexus for probes faster, which increases your income faster. It still gives you a cost, but it will also increase your income. So you've increased your costs only by chronoing your gateway when you didn't need it. Then you also increased your costs again by making a gateway before you needed it, and you're going to increase it again by making a Stalker before you need it out of the gateway. Because again, you're making the Stalker like 20 seconds before you want to make it out of this second gateway. And then you're also, and then you're trying to maintain this with also making probes. And you're stretching everything super thin. But the chrono boosted gateway for this game I would say the first kernel of the gateway is okay either way. It's not that big of a deal. But the second gateway does fuck you a bit more because, again, you also made a Stalker 2 out of it earlier than you would have wanted to. So that adds up pretty fast. It adds up to a lot of resources being tied into that.
So is there like a timer that I can use of when I had the resources, I try to like spend the resources when I have them. So when I had 150, I was like, hey, I have enough to build this, so I want to build it.
Build it when...
You would say that you would time that...
Build it.
Yeah, you go.
Build it when you can make your robo and your gateway at the same time, and that should be in the middle of when your sentry is being made of the first gateway. Also, here's another timer for you. If you want an exact location of like, I want an exact number though, between 40 and 50 on your core upgrade, because it makes no sense to make it before 40, or like 50 is actually even more better, but 40 is like very minimal time being wasted there on the gateway being done, because again, you don't want to tie your second gateway up into producing unit for like 23, 24, 25, 22. You don't want to have a bunch of seconds being tied up with the stalker being produced when it could have just been a warp gate. Not only could you then also warp in a stalker faster instead of letting it finish out of the gateway, but then the cooldown's faster and blah, blah, blah. We already explained that. So like, it's just positives all around if you just make that warp gate faster on the second gate. The only way it would make sense to go for the second gate early is if you made that second gate before your Nexus, which means you would be able to actually have a second gate done with like 70 seconds or 80 seconds before warp gate's done, that's more of like a one base opener. But again, we're not doing that, so that's not what we're doing. So you definitely want to pair that with your warp gate. And then when you make the second gate, pair that with the robo. Okay. And also, the other thing too is you left your probe up here for like a super long time. I think it actually died. And that thing could have come back.
Sometimes I do that. Is that kind of like I've been saved by it a couple times, but like I know people are like, well, that's 1/16 of your your mining.
That's what I would say. It's a lot of your mining, but like because think about it like this. That's why I stress on you compare build to build. You don't need to leave your probe there anymore. Like if you knew how to look at this and go, oh, I know this is economical. It's not all in. I don't need to keep this probe here because I'm going to see 5 Marauders and 20 SCVs walk out of his base. It doesn't exist right now.
That's fair.
Because he went for a command center before I made a Nexus, which meant, and he also made a barracks, but it's after my gateway. So I can tell he went in the other order of command center, but then racks, as opposed to racks and command center. But like, the fact that you see a command center that fast, there's no chance of like, oh well, he could also have like 4 proxy racks, or like it's too much money. He doesn't start the
That's not how that works.
Yeah, like he starts the game off with 50 minerals, not like 2,000. So
right.
He can't do more than you can, essentially. And the funny thing is think about it like this too. This is a good way to think about it as well. If you're Protoss, you actually are the fastest race within the first like 3 minutes of the game. So Zerg is going to be a little bit slower than you, and Terran is going to be a bit slower than you. And the reason why is because at least Zerg can make multiple units at the same time out of larva, the way that works. But they still have to sacrifice their workers to build buildings. You don't have to do that as Protoss. And then, so they're going to be a little bit behind you until Queens pop out, which is not going to be until after your scout with your probe, because you're doing a gateway scout. So you'll, like, if you see a Zerg who looks like he's about on par with your spending, or maybe a little bit behind you, that's normal. That's how it should be. Same thing goes for Terran. Terran's going to be a little bit behind Zerg, because Terran also, they don't lose their worker like a Zerg does, but they also don't get the mine either. Because their SCV gets tied up building the building the entire time.
Right. And they also don't have
they don't have mules right away
or whatever.
Exactly. Like you start with overcharge right away. Terran does not start with mules. They have to sacrifice making economy at first to make SCVs by going, okay, command center, upgrade to an orbital, and then finally that's like the time of 2 SCVs. And then an orbital finishes, and then finally now they can make SCVs again, and they can drop mules. But again, that does not kick in immediately. That's like around 2 minutes is when that kicks in. So
like I try to make my like first 4 minutes crisper, because there's a video you teach. There's a silver one where you went ham and you went like you maxed out at like 9-10 as Protoss.
Yep, you can max even faster.
I try to emulate that. So, like, from the benchmarks you got from that game were about 39 workers at about 4 minutes. So I'm a little bit behind there. But would you say overall, not a bad opening? I can fix these small details up. But
I mean, it's not the worst. It's you have the right idea. Okay. It's not terrible.
Okay.
So like I'm just trying to give you, because again the way it always goes is these are the easy the reason why I focus so hard on these is because the easy problems to fix can actually eliminate future problems that are harder to deal with. Because if you give yourself,
no one's attacking right now.
Exactly.
So like,
exactly.
this is okay.
It's not hard to fix these because it's just you versus the AI. It's always the same thing. It's like you trying to control a probe essentially. So it's always going to be the same. And if you do a really good job here, it could make your mid game a difference of like, well, now instead of having 110 supply, maybe you have 126 supply, and that could be a difference of like, instead of you having to micro like a boss in a fight, you could just A move it and be like, well, that extra 16 supply just crushed because I just had more.
Yeah.
It's very real. So that's why I definitely want you to make sure you clean up your early game as much as possible and really understand what you're doing.
Okay.
Now
I think this is where I see.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good.
He has a. I played this guy before, a game right before him.
Yep.
So I thought, oh, is he going to do the same thing? Because he went battle cruisers.
Okay.
And I see the fusion core. So that's when I start to deviate a little bit from the Bronx GM.
So I would say this, okay? This is how I'd react to this.
Okay.
There's two things that is important about this. I love that you scouted, by the way. That's the fact that you scouted, super good. Amazing job. That was a well-timed scout. But here's what you should look at, though. When you scouted over his base, you saw a bunch of Marines and a siege tank. And that looks like bio to a degree, right? You're like, okay, well, Marines and tank, there's like 8 Marines. That kind of looks like bio, but look, check this out. You get to his base and you still see a reactor on the racks. So he's still making Marines. He could still make Marines if he wanted to. You see a tech lab on a factory. You see a tech lab on a starport. And you see 2 more factories. So this is not bio. Like, this is definitely going to be mech. And if this is going to be mech, then if this is going to be mech because he's making multiple factories, well, it means that units like Immortals now are going to be even better because they're going to pound the shit out of mech and, you know, blah, blah, blah. You can make beta gym units and you could do a great job here. But this means he's making a more expensive army, and it's going to be like lower amounts of it with high supply. It's like not just mass little units like Marines. Now, secondly,
what does a tech on a starport mean?
The tech lab on a starport opens up the ability to make a Raven, a Banshee, or a battlecruiser. Now, I would say it's probably not. I would say honestly, this starport, it probably makes more sense that it's going to be a Banshee, and the reason why is because this dude has no gas at the natural. He's starting a gas at the natural. Like no gas at one of them. He's starting a gas at the other one. So he's light on the gas right now. And he's doing a extremely gas heavy factory opening with 3 factories on 2 bases. And you can also, battlecruisers are extremely gas expensive. This would look more like battlecruisers if it was like a reactor on a factory and then a Rax that's just sitting there by itself doing nothing, and then a tech lab starport. And then if you also saw a fusion core in his base. Gas. Yeah, and then if you exactly, if you saw a fusion core in his base, you'd be like, okay, now it's definitely BCs. Because he doesn't have a, because here's the thing. Tech lab on a factory, that's a gas expense. 2 more factories, that's 2 more gas expenses. A battlecruiser is a massive gas expense. You can't afford BCs and triple factory on 2 bases. And he's not even prioritizing gas.
So I'm pretty sure we're going to see a fusion core at the end of his mineral line. Does that just mean he's being inefficient?
That would definitely mean he's being inefficient. This build sucks ass. Like, that build. Okay, so.
Oh no! Oh man, I didn't look all the way. There it is.
It just started. So yeah, this build this makes no sense. This build is awful.
Okay.
So like, this is gonna be an example. Like, watch this. This is why. Look at the factory and look at the starport. Like, I don't want to jump on Solomon. I'm sorry, man. I don't mean to. If you ever watch this, I don't want to rip on you too much. But let's watch his factories and watch his starport. Okay. Like, there's gonna be a ton of downtime here. So. Starport's still idle. Factory's all idle. Starport's idle. Factory's idle. And we're on ×4, by the way. Idle. Nothing. Now something else gets made. Still nothing on the starport. Still nothing on the starport. It's like, why make it if you can't use it? It makes no sense. Again, a big gas expense on these factories, but he's still making nothing on that starport. This thing was made like 3 minutes ago at this point. And it's still doing nothing. So that's definitely why I would say this build is super inefficient. If you think about it in terms of like, you cannot go battlecruisers with this.
Okay. Sucks is then like you look back and you're like, how did I lose, man?
No, you're totally. It happens to everybody, right? Because StarCraft goes so much faster pace. That's why I really wanted you to look at like for like this is like the build and go, oh, command center first and then Rax. A lot of people don't look at that.
Okay.
They're like, well, it's just Terran. I don't know. He's got Terran stuff. He could make
Terran
anything
doing
Terran.
Terran
Yeah,
shit.
he could make Marines,
Yeah,
I guess. I
yeah.
don't fucking know.
Alright.
But now, if you actually
Okay.
think about the details and you're like, okay, well, that means he can't attack me early. And then I go further into it and I go, okay, well, this means now he has a fuckload of gas that's being tied up and everything, and he's not even prioritizing gas. How the hell is he going to make any units out of this? Like, if anything, it would be like a Banshee, because a Banshee's only 100 gas. It's not that bad. And he doesn't have to get Cloak either if he doesn't want to. It's not required. I would definitely say if this is going to be Banshees with it, he probably would skip Cloak, because the only way he could actually utilize these factories is if he skipped Cloak. Because Cloak is another expensive gas upgrade.
Heavy.
Exactly. Like, you can't make mine 300 gas and then go, I'm going to spend 2,000 now. Like, you can't.
Sure.
You have to have enough to do everything. So this right here, seeing this, going triple factory and also a tech lab starport, I'd be like, to maintain this efficiently, I would need at the bare minimum 6 gases. Bare minimum 6 gases. That's a lot of gas expenses right there. And like, not only that, because not only this, like, think about this too. Like, is this guy gonna get? Is he gonna get upgrades at all? Is he gonna make an armory? That's a gas. Like, is he gonna just stay 0-0 all game? If he does, that's awful as well. So you have to think, like, if someone's gonna play standard, like this right here is massively inefficient.
Okay.
Also, another thing
When I see,
go ahead. Sorry.
oh, when I see the fusion core again, I know that he's going tanks, because he did this last game, and that was also a really weird thing too. Is that I did the same. I think I did the same thing, and I beat him last game. This game I didn't, but he goes massive tanks. He goes battle cruisers.
Yep.
So I start to deviate a little bit. With the Bronze GM, I don't go.
I want you to think about this. I want you to think about this for a second too, though. So, I would say in Beta GM, I'm gonna add more. So in like 2021 Beta GM, I'm gonna add more charge lot Archon Immortal compositions to what I'm doing. I'm just not doing it right away because that army is not as easy. Like, you need to scout to react with that. Like, if someone's going air and you have a bunch of charge lots, you're just gonna be like, well, how do I fight against mutas?
That's why I changed it. That's why I changed it.
But I'm just gonna say in general, if your opponent goes, if you're afraid of the guy, think about this for a second. If you're afraid of the guy going battle cruisers, for instance, and you have stalkers, stalkers are more than enough to kill one starport BC, easy peasy.
Okay.
Like, you're gonna basically have a situation where it could be like 30 stalkers versus like 2 BCs, and 30 stalkers would fucking annihilate 2 BCs, no problem.
Annihilate that.
So I would say it's not. I wouldn't even be worried at all if I were you about the potential of BCs if they actually existed. But one thing to note that is also big about scouting. This is just as big as what I talked about earlier when I said, okay, your first probe gets across the map. We're comparing build base to base, gateway to nexus versus racks to command center, and you go, okay, well, I know what he did early. Same thing happens again right now. You scouted at his base right here, and what are you seeing? We'll go back right when the scout happened. This is a big scout. This is why I said this is such a good scout. I wanted to touch on this point too, that I'm about to say. You see 5 production buildings, and they're not cheap ones either. They're not racks. They're factory. This is like making 3 robos for Protoss.
It's like 3 robos, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So this is expensive production. Okay, starport is the most expensive you can make. Factory is still pretty expensive, and then barracks is pretty cheap. Just like Stargate is the most expensive you can make. Robo is still somewhat expensive, and they're close together. Like a Stargate would be like 100, Robo would be like a 90, and then a gateway would be like.
So it's 50. Like he made like a warp gate and 3 robos.
Well, what I'm trying to say is your build in comparison to his would be 2 racks factory. His build in comparison to yours would be 1 gateway, 3 robos, and a Stargate.
Yeah. Okay.
So if you think about it like that, could you afford to make 3 robos, a Stargate, and also 1 gateway, 3 robo Stargate, and also afford your 3rd base? Definitely fucking not. Way. Definitely fucking not. And you just scouted that that's what he has. So you know what that means? There's no 3rd base. That's a huge sign to read an opponent. And now what that means is if you see no 3rd and you have a 3rd and you don't see a 3rd from your opponent, it definitely means that he's most likely going to attack you, because if he doesn't, I mean, you're just going to get super far ahead with the game. So the only thing that you would want to read from that is definitely stay defensive. Don't move your army across the map or anything. You could, if you wanted to really be crazy about this, you could even like, I'll show this as well later on in the Beta Gym series for Protoss, but if you know, you're like, oh, he's definitely investing into aggression and I'm investing into defense. What if you built like 1 pylon right here? What if you built like 1 pylon right here? What if you built 1 pylon like right there?
And you did that last series.
Yeah,
like those scout pylons.
Exactly. It's super cheap, And it's like a trigger that goes,
Okay.
oh, he's here. So instead of him just sieging me, and then I go, let's react to sieged tanks, how about we see him up here, and I go, oh, he's attacking my pylon, and he's not actually in range to kill my Nexus yet, so I could then A-move him, and I could catch him possibly walking into me unsieged, and the fight goes suddenly way better with an A-move. Things
Sure.
like that. Like, it's so much more efficient for you. And meanwhile, if he doesn't attack you, you know he's not attacking you and setting up on you because your pylons are revealing it where he could be, and you're just getting this massive lead because you know this is where you should feel confident and go, okay, every second of the game that he doesn't attack me, I know I'm getting further ahead and further ahead and further ahead because this is not 3 bases. This is 2
So
base
should I
timing.
shift my
Go ahead.
should I shift my priorities a bit then, because I'm getting the third at 4, which you said is kind of greedy. And if
No,
he's
it's good.
going
That's
aggression,
good. You should definitely take a
like,
third at 4.
Okay. Okay.
That's I want you to I
Because-
want your third to go down as fast as it did. That's good.
Okay. Even though it looks like he's gearing up to like attack soon.
Yes, because look at this. This is also why. What did you just do? You just made a third. And what did he just do?
Right.
He just made additional factories. So he can't attack you in the next like 30 seconds and then you're going to die. This is
That's
something
fair.
this
He
is
can't
something that's
produce.
going to be attacking you by like 7 minutes. Probably.
Okay.
Like it
Okay.
means
So I
that
have time.
Yeah, exactly. You have plenty of time. The mid game is because you got to realize he's got to make a factory and this thing's 43 seconds. And then he's got to make an add-on for these factories. That's another 18 or another like 36 seconds based off if it's a tech lab or a reactor. And then he's got to start making units. And let's pretend he does make tanks. So a tank itself is a 32-second build time unit. So bare minimum to make one tank, if we want to average this and go, okay, well, if we know a factory is about 40 seconds, and we know that it's only like 10% of the way, or like a fourth of the way done right now. If it's 40 seconds and we take a fourth off of that, it's now like 30 seconds left on that. So we're averaging. I don't expect you to know all this shit right away. But if you can eyeball this
Sure.
and go, that's about 30 seconds off. And then you go, well, then if it's going to be tanks, plus 18 to that. And then to make tanks, plus another 30. So bare minimum. And then also think about like just the fact of making a tank and having it drive literally down to the base of his ramp and start leaving his base. That's like another 10 seconds for the tank to go poof and then just leave his base to get down the ramp
Okay.
and get everything out of his base. So bare minimum,
Okay.
an easy way to read this is looking at this and going, bare minimum in about 90 seconds, which would be 6 minutes, he will be starting to leave his base with 1 round of tanks out of all of his factories, the additional ones, which would start to be
Again,
more of a scary timing.
I didn't see that he was making the third CC, or else I think it would have justified what I do next better.
And
But if he's only on 2 and he's showing aggression, should I stay on 3 and just start pumping out more units as opposed to going to a 4th, knowing that
no,
he
you
might
should take
have
a
an
4th.
attack
You
coming?
should take a 4th either way. The whole point of Beat a
Even if
GM,
he's coming at like 6 to 7?
yeah, that's fine. The reason why, again, I say this all the time, people in Platinum League play inefficient as fuck. And the fact that he is actually making a
Okay.
3rd command center is incredibly inefficient. Why would you ever
Because
make...
he's making production.
Yes, like why would you ever make factories... why would you make this and then this at the same time? It's exactly the same reason why when I fast-forwarded his build and we saw a fusion core, and it was like, look at all these idle buildings. Idle. It was like, between the
Sure.
3 minutes I was on ×8, his production on Starport was at 0% capacity, and his factories, I would say, were probably at like 20% capacity. Like it was always like
Okay.
1 factory pumping, 2 factories off. 1 factory's done, now 2 pump, and then they're done. And then it's not even like one after the other, like right away. Like it's finished and another one starts. It was like a unit finishes, and then 28 seconds later, a unit starts. And then 20 seconds, and then it finishes, and then 35 seconds later, a unit starts. Because he can't afford, he's trying to stretch like $5 to $100. It's like you're going to the store and you're like, you literally buy a cart of $100 worth of items, and you're like, I'll pay you $5 for it. You can't afford this, bro. This is too much.
Cashier's like, get that shit out of here. Yeah.
It's fucking too much. You can't afford that. So yeah, his build is
Okay.
massively inefficient. And if your build is just efficient, even if you're expanding really fast and playing greedy, that's why I was saying all the time the golden rule is efficiency beats non-efficiency. So if you do efficient greed,
Okay. So you can be greedy efficiently.
yes. So remember how earlier in the start of this lesson I said the things where it's like greedy loses to aggression, aggression loses to safe, and safe loses to greed.
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense though if one player is inefficient and the other player is efficient. Then suddenly anything beats anything if it's efficiency versus non-efficiency.
Right. Right. If it's shitty aggression, then it doesn't really
Exactly.
matter.
You just need to worry about your build being clean. That's all it is.
Okay.
This is why I don't like teaching people deviations of builds that much, because the only way you can make a proper deviation is if you can flawlessly scout and read your opponent's build. Because if you read someone's build and go, all right, let's do something, and then it's inefficient reads. Like, it's not only is it an inefficient read because you assume something that's not happening, but you also do something that doesn't work out efficiently because you're free balling your build, and you're like, I'm gonna make photon cannons now or whatever. You know what I mean? It doesn't. I'm not saying you did that, but an example would be something not great. You just put yourself in this realm of now it's suddenly inefficiency versus inefficiency, and you're both playing inefficient then.
Okay.
So you really shouldn't try to make these like free ball reads until you can really scout someone's build and accurately go, I know what you're capable of. And the way you start that, the way you really start learning that is you base their build off of your build. Okay, so we'll fast forward now. We'll kind of get through this a little bit. So, I mean, you're saturating your third base. It's all good. You take your fourth base. I like it. You're saturating your third. You fixed it. You're fully saturated it. You're now you're adding on it like here you go. You're adding on a bunch of stargates.
Get coins at rally.io.
And gateways, fleet beacon, more gateways. And now this is that moment where I would say your economy's not bad. It's definitely not bad. Your composition is all. I'm not gonna say I don't like your composition because it depends what you make out of these stargates. But this is, again, I would say it's not the biggest deal of what you chose. It's more I would say the biggest deal of if you use it or not. So here's an example of efficiency. Here's an example of efficiency. Check this out. A Stargate build time is 43 seconds. A Fleet Beacon's build time is 43 seconds. Now, if your plan, let's just say hypothetically, you're going to go Tempest, okay? Or Carrier. Either one of these units that requires a Fleet Beacon. If your idea to go to a Fleet Beacon, to make your Stargates make either one of these units, your ideal build order for that should be Stargate, wait till it's done, then make Fleet Beacon first, and then make additional Stargates as however many you need. However, if you do something like this where you go, okay, I'm going to do a Stargate transition. Let's just make like 4 Stargates or 3 Stargates, and then we'll make our Fleet Beacon when I can do it with the tech path. All you do is you tie up all this extra, every single Stargate that's not the one, you just tie up all this money that could have been made into your gateway units or your robo instead.
Oh, because I can't use it if I'm making those. Okay.
It's just efficiency in your build, right? It's things like that. And you could be doing so much more. So like, for instance, the fact that you guys have tied supply right now, like we've seen this guy's build is inefficient, right? And the fact that you are tied with him in supply essentially means that your build also is pretty inefficient. And here's the scarier thing. Not only are you almost tied with him in supply, but you're also beating him in probes, which means you're actually down a bit in army supply. And that is where you can die to a timing. So the only reason why you're down in supply is because your build is kind of it's becoming to be all over the place, and you're building shit, but you're building buildings, but you're not building units enough. So, for instance, the fact that at almost 8, or let's go to 8 minutes to round it off. At 8 minutes now, you have 16 Stalker, 2 Immortal, and a Sentry and an Observer. The probe count's good, but unit count definitely a bit on the low end. Because think about this. Let me give you a breakdown here really fast. Again, you're playing mech, right? And Immortals fucking wreck mech. 8 minutes, and you have 2 Immortals, and you're not even making one either. Now, when did your Robo finish? Your Robo finished at, come on, right after here. Robo finishes at 346. So an Immortal takes, we'll round it off to say 40 seconds, and an Observer takes 20 seconds. So you made 1 minute of Immortal Robo, or sorry, Immortal Observer, and then another 40 seconds on top of that with another Immortal. So you made 1 minute and 40 seconds worth of units out of this Robo. And 1 minute and 40 seconds worth of units would put you at 5 minutes and 20 seconds. So from 5 minutes and 20 seconds until 8 minutes, and that was, you weren't even making anything at 8 minutes. But once we realized it and paused it at 8 minutes, from 5:20 to 8 minutes, that could have been Immortal, and you made 0 of them. It was just, you stopped at 5:20 essentially if you were hypothetically to use this from right now with 100% efficiency. And then think about like how long is 5:20 to 8? That's like 2 minutes and 40 seconds. That's fucking huge. How many Immortals could you fit in 2 minutes and 40 seconds? That's
like 3.
Yeah. No, more than that. You could probably
more than that.
Like 2 minutes is 120 plus 40 is 160, and then 40 goes into 164 times, so you can make 4 immortals in that difference of time. So you could have been at 6 immortals instead of 2.
Interesting. Okay.
And it's just it's just one of those things where it's like that's why the again the golden rule I stress all the time in BDGM is efficiency of building production, like keeping it up like 4-5, keep it going, never stop building. And that's why, like, when you say, for instance, if you say something like, well, you maxed out just after like 9 minutes, and that was really fast, you could max out even faster than that. Like, that's not even like, that's like pristine. Like, you can definitely get, like, if you're playing greedy, like I'm showing you how to play with the Nexus expands, you can max out so ridiculously fast if you are really good on top of spending your money.
So I went a little crazy because I started adding like gateways and stuff. I had the money for it, but I started adding the gateways and like the stargates and stuff. You're saying I really need to like focus on making units from each of my buildings first and then doing that.
So remember how I talked about priority with I've talked about priority a few times with a few things already.
Yeah.
Like,
Yes.
So priority of what you should be doing now with your production. We're not talking about like probe first, immortal second, that kind of stuff. Now we're talking about your time of like what you're doing. And your priority of time should be produce out of what exists already, and then add to it. So if you ever go backwards and you go, well, now let's just add shit, and then you don't produce out of buildings you own. So now if your building goes idle for like 3 minutes almost, and you're like, well, I was building gateways though. Like it's like that's one of those things where if you play a higher level player that doesn't miss those 3 minutes of production time, and then they attack you. Your gateways have no chance to like kick into effect and like recover the time you lost, because they like you just basically added in a cost in your build that they didn't add in theirs because they did good uptime of their buildings. So here's an example. Okay, this is another example of what I mean. This will make sense if I say it this way, I think. Imagine you have a player who has 100% uptime of their building. He's really good at it, and he has 2 gateways, and that's it. And then we're pacing this guy over the course of like 5 minutes, and then you have a guy who is really bad about keeping the pacing of his building uptime, and maybe it's like only going 25% of the time. But he gets to the same amount of units at 5 minutes as the guy with 2 gateways, but the guy who has a slow like 25% situation going on, let's say he makes like 8 gateways. But now at 5 minutes, they have the exact they have the exact same army size of whatever the gateway army is at that moment in time at 5 minutes. But then you have to go, okay, well, if one player has 30 supply or whatever, like the certain supply, and the other player has the same supply at this exact same time, but one player did it with 2 gates, and the other player did it with 8 gates, what's the discrepancy there? And it's the cost of the other 6 gateways, and what did that money do? There's so much more early on in the game you can do with your money if you don't build buildings you don't need yet. And you could do like, oh, this guy could have expanded faster. He could have made probes faster. He could have. That's why he was keeping his buildings going, is because he made more economy faster, and he was able to support all of his other stuff faster. His upgrades are faster. All these other things are faster because he's really good about maintaining production on gateways, and you can still match your opponent who is not producing very well. And that is why.
So would you?
Or go ahead. You go. Sorry.
So would you have done what I did with making the Stargates and the extra buildings?
I would have done that in like Masters League. I would have added Stargates into my build in Masters League because I do think Tempest are amazing against mech. But I would have definitely been producing out of my Robo the entire time. And here's the thing, right? Here's the thing. If your opponent's build is this inefficient, I really do think like we'll go back to 8 minutes really fast. I think that at 8 minutes, I'll just speed it up like this. Like right about here. I think that instead of being at 124 versus 114 at 8 minutes, if I scouted what I saw and I went, okay, well, if we read his build and let's just say we do everything we talked about, like we can chrono boost our Nexus, we don't have to prioritize the chrono on the gateway, and we eventually make our second Robo or a second gateway and Robo and produce constantly, keep 100% uptime as much as possible. I would be it's a very real assumption that my supply right now at this point in the game could be like 150 or like 140, probably more towards 150. And then if this guy were to attack me, even if I have an army that's like stalkers versus tanks, where it's like that doesn't feel that great, I can run his ass over because I have so much. And then also
much of it.
another thing you can do too, which is what you're doing, is if you get blink, you could literally just aim move towards him and go, oh, he's got a bunch of tanks and they're sieging. Blink right on top of them, and then suddenly you take great trades.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, because I think he was going to go mech, so I went blink first instead of charge.
That's fine. Charge lots also would be great here, because charge lots are like a hard counter to a tank.
Okay.
It's just it's only not a hard counter if you just don't have enough. So if there's like 20 tanks versus like 8 zealots, well, 20 tanks are gonna win. But if you have like 20 zealots versus 8 tanks, well, zealots are gonna crush. So now this is one of those times where it's like, this is if you had safety pylons, right? You would have saw this happening before it happened, and you could engage before the siege.
Right. Okay.
But now again, you're still close to somewhat close to his supply. I mean, you just started some more units. I think you just made a couple more Tempest units or something. But your army is very, very idle at the moment. It's like, ideally what you want to have as well is you want your whole army to be centralized in your base. So, because again, your expansions are super exposed. So what's happening now is your whole army is just spawning out of a rally point, like in your main base, and just sitting there. These units are still in the, like, your whole army pretty much is still in the main base. So you're so far out of position if like he attacks you here, or if he attacks you here, which is what he's doing. He's attacking you on this side.
Okay.
So if your army was like here, you could get there way faster. And now the problem with tanks is if you attack them after they've sieged, it's a problem for you.
Yeah.
Another thing too, I would say, is definitely at this point, what I would do if I were you is I would grab my probes and I would just literally right click right here. And I would immediately take another probe and build a nexus right here. Because the fact that you've allowed him to siege like this, the chances of this nexus dying are very high.
Right.
And if you leave your probes here, they're just going to die as well.
Sure.
I'll start doing probe micro as well in Beta Jam around like Gold League. I'm not going to just like always AFK them forever.
Sure.
Okay, so you actually saved the base. Or do you though? The Thors are here. Oh god.
He gets Thors, which is what he changed from last game. Last game he didn't have Thors.
Yeah. And that's just...
We learned...
That's just one of these things, again, that I would say is, it's not about, like, it is about your macro. It's not about your comp. It's not about your micro. It's literally about the fact that you just didn't have enough shit. And if you had more immortals here, you could have just chewed through the tank line so fast.
Okay.
Because this attack hits you like at 920 or so.
Sure.
And that 920 from 8 minutes, that's like another 2 immortals right there. So you, now instead of having what was it, an additional like 4, you could have had now an additional like 6, and you already had 2, so you could have had like 8 immortals at this point when he shows up at your base. Imagine 8 immortals running over these tanks.
Okay.
They would fucking crush these, and they would also crush these Thors, super hard.
Yeah. Okay.
Because again, the golden concept of everything is really just, if you ever play like, here's a good example. I'm sure everyone out there, or a lot of people out there, have played someone where you go, oh, I literally can't beat this guy. It's like impossible. He's just better than me. I don't know how the fuck I'm ever going to be able to beat him. And he's just better at StarCraft than I am. And the reason why that is not because he's like scouting you and out-microing you and out-maneuvering you every single game. I mean, he might be doing that as well, but that's not why he's winning. If you ever play against someone who is just overall... like got a 100% win rate against you, like one of your friends or something, and you just can't beat them, it's because they can outpace you with efficiency. And they can always make you feel behind, because you are always behind. And you literally can't keep up with them if your build just doesn't flow properly. That's just how it goes. So
my biggest issue here was I just wasn't making enough units out of the buildings I had already made.
100%, yeah.
Okay.
That's why I wish StarCraft 2 doesn't have this, and there is no mod that has this either. But I wish StarCraft 2 had a stat that would literally go to, like, you would have 4 of them, okay? So it would be like, your Nexus is one of those, your Gateway is one of those, your Robo is one of those, and your Stargate's one of those. And it literally says percentage of being used, like once it's done.
Oh.
And it literally can average off all of your buildings. So like if you have 3 Stargates, it takes the average of all 3 of those. And if we had to put a number on this, it would probably be something like I could go back and get a more real guess here if I really like added up the timer, but I would say your Nexus probably like 80%, 80 to 85%. You hit a pretty good probe count pretty fast. So your Nexus was definitely not bad. There was a couple hiccups here and there, but not bad. Your Gateway probably more like 50%, 50 to 60%. Your Robo probably more like 25%, and your Stargate's probably
Okay.
also around like 20 to 25%. Uh,
Okay.
oh, actually, that's not fair. Your Stargates, because they just finished, so your Stargates would actually they'd probably be more like 50 to 60 because they just finished. But like check this out. Like this is why your average would be super low, is because you made them way before your fleet beacon, right? Like they just sat there, which again that's why I talked about inefficiency before. And let's see what happens. We'll just watch your Stargates. Watch when your fleet beacon's done, and let's see how it goes. So fleet beacon finishes like right now at like 8:18. Stargates are chilling. Okay, now they get used. Now does it consistently go or no? Let's see. So okay, you set up another round. That was good. On 2 out of 3, one of them's still idle now. And now these two are going. And now how do these two go? Now that one's idle. Now this one's idle. Yeah. And now you have 2 of them going and one of them's idle. So you're having again, this is just not ideal. You're like it's not the worst. Like it's definitely the worst if it's like 10% or something where it's just like you make one unit and then you just don't make things for like 4 minutes. But this is still, I would say, again, the average is starting to drop down more and more and more because as we go, the Stargates get used less and less and less. Like that was a good round right there. You made all 3 at the same time. But like, let's check out what happens after this. Now, the only time you should actually stop making Tempest is when you feel like you've made enough. And if that happens to be the case, well, then that's fine and it's not a big deal. But again, if we're not maxed out yet and your army is literally down to like 100 supply, most likely you're going to want to make more of everything you have. Now, let's go back for a second. Or actually, just watch this for just a little bit longer. Let's see if you make any more. Like, if you make more and no Tempest die, like you're making more now, no Tempests have died, so you're clearly not at the ideal number you want to be at. Now you have 7. Stargates are idle. Now see if you make any more. Just waiting for a while. Now you're making more. 2 Stargates are not being used for like 2-3 minutes solid here. Now you're at 8. Are you gonna make more than 8? We'll see. If you do, then now you're making more. You're still okay. Well, you're starting to lose them though. So if you're starting to lose them, it's less impactful. But the point that I'm trying to make here is try to have a plan to a degree to go. I want to have like maybe I want to have like 10 Tempest. Like you could you don't have to do the math on everything and be like, well, I know 10 Tempest, 2 shots at battlecruiser. Like that's more advanced shit. Again, I don't expect anyone in Platinum to know that. But what I do think that you should do in Platinum is you should have, with whatever army you're trying to make, have an idea in mind where you go, if I'm going to make specialistic units, I have an idea of how many of them I want to make. Especially, then this gets even more, this point gets even more like prioritied. I can't think of a word I'm trying to use here. It's more of a priority if you have even more production than 1 per cycle. So if you have the idea of going, well, I want to go Tempest, and I'm not going to just gradually add them in my army with 1 Stargate. I'm going to do that with 3 Stargates. So that's definitely like a goal there. You're definitely adding in Tempest to your army. So you should have an idea. Okay, well, when I make Tempest, I should try to go for like 10 Tempest. And where am I getting this number from? Like, why? How does it make sense? You don't need to know how many Tempests it takes to kill a unit. That's definitely advanced. What you should know, though, in Platinum level, is how much supply a Tempest costs. And it's 5. So if you look at a Tempest and you go, okay, well, if I make 10 Tempest, that's going to be 50 supply in my army. And if I have 80 probes, or like 85 probes, that means that I have roughly 120 army supply to work with here. And now 50 of that is going to be Tempest. So that means I have 70 left for everything else. And then does that feel good against what you're up against? And if the answer is yes, then that's awesome. And if the answer is no, then maybe rethink that number. And I would say against the army you're fighting against, where it's mostly tank, think about like, what is a Tempest counter? Are you making a Tempest versus mass Thors? It's not ideal. You definitely don't want to go just Tempest versus just Thor. But if you're fighting mostly tank, then suddenly, it's a great idea. And now suddenly the idea of having 50 supply of Tempest is totally fine. That sounds great. Because if your opponent has the same exact supply investment you do, or again, you don't have to be exact, but if he has a ton of tanks, and like, for instance, a tank is 3 supply and he has 11 of them, so it's 33 supply of tanks. So if he's got 33 supply of tanks and I have 50 supply of Tempest, I'm feeling pretty good about that because that's a big part of my army that just hard counters his army right there. That's super efficient for you. So these are things you want to kind of think about a little bit. And if you think about it like that, you have a goal then where you go, okay, let's quickly use my Stargates to get me to that number, my desired number that I'm trying to go for. Like roughly, it could maybe you stop at 8, maybe you stop at 12, but you get to the point where you're trying to be roughly, and you're happy with it, and you don't waste a bunch of time to be like, well, I don't know, let's make some units, let's stop making units, let's make some units, let's stop making units, let's make some units, let's stop making units, and you're just like kind of like have a question mark above your head where you're like, I don't know what I want.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like you have an ideal, a visualization in your mind of like what you think you want to have. And again, I don't think you should be an expert at this. It's something that you'll develop over time, but it's a thought process you should be thinking about. This is how you should be thinking about your composition when you make it, when you diversify it like this. Because if you don't want to diversify and you want to take that thought process out of the equation, by all means, just make like charge the Archon Immortal and like start with Stalker and then just go charge the Archon Immortal every game if they're not going air, and then just max it as fast as you can. And that also that takes the thought process away from all of it, and you just max. That's your goal now.
Yeah, but I mean, you kind of need that though if you want to get past plat, right?
No,
you're gonna need that eventually.
You don't. Platinum is not that level yet. Diamond, honestly, is like only partially that. I would say that really comes into play in Masters League, because again, what all of this means is we're talking about some like what we're doing with like talking about compositional stuff. What is that? How do we figure those numbers out? Right? We talked about how our opponent's army looks. This means reading your opponent, and reading your opponent is a skill you are going to develop over time, and I definitely don't expect you to have mastered that inside of Platinum, because again, the only way you can truly read someone with accuracy is if they can play efficient, and if they can't play efficient, it's hard to read people. Like it's for instance, it'd be something like this. Okay, my opponent went for 5 production buildings right off the bat, and it's super expensive, and he set up a fucking tech lab on the starport as well. All the things we talked about earlier, but then like he doesn't attack you until 9 minutes.
He takes a third.
Yeah, like he takes a third, and then he takes a fourth, and then he attacks you. It makes no sense. Like he should have taken the expansions first and then exploded his production. It would have made more sense. And the reason why it would have made more sense is because he could have had way more supply when he finally attacked you if he's going to wait that long. But the reason why he doesn't know, or why he doesn't do that, is probably because in general, when a lot of people that are lower level play StarCraft 2, they don't have a game plan. They don't go, well, I'm going to go for a 4-base timing. They go, I'm going to just go mech. And then they just throw shit down randomly. Like game number 4 looks different from game number 5, and game number 6 is different from both of those. Like it's literally something different every time. And like sometimes he's like, well, this game felt good, and he doesn't remember the fact that maybe he went command center before production. And the next game he's like, well, this game feels like I'm contained and I'm losing. And maybe he made too much production and couldn't afford it. And now his economy sucks.
Sure.
But he doesn't think about it like that. So game plan is something you need to start developing for yourself for sure. And it's about how to just play as efficient as possible with like getting your supply up. And you can slowly start reading the opponent and stuff like that. But it's definitely not your priority right now. It's something you should just slowly build up on. And all the things we talked about, like early on in scouting, that's the kind of shit you should really start looking at, so you can actually try to accurately read what your opponent's capable of, because based off what you have done yourself.
So, what do you think a big takeaway from this match would be?
Your macro was not good enough, and if it was, you would have run his army over there, which would have changed the entire game.
But it seems like there's different aspects. Like for example, you gave me kind of like an A when it came to like probes, but then like a B- when it came. So do you mean like macro specifically by building units?
So I think this is what you should do. This is what I would say is the best way you can take away from this game and have progression as a player. You should continue to try to scout like you have been, but don't ever leave your probe idle there. Okay, like the best thing you can do is check his base thoroughly if you don't really know what's going on, but then go into the replay after it's over and look and go, like break it down yourself and go, are there like key points here I can look at? If I compare my build to his build, what are the deviations? Like where is he going different than me? And like what should I be freaking out or not? Like try to like start analytically thinking about what is he doing compared to what you are doing, and like does it make sense? And is there a reason to panic about something? Like, is there a reason to feel like you're intimidated, like you're going to get killed or something like that? Then secondly, same thing with your scout of your Phoenix. I love that you do it. Keep doing it. And try to think to yourself, well, what is a standard build? A standard build is something like I have. I have 3 production buildings, and I have like a 3rd base. And it's economically focused. If my opponent goes for like 5 buildings and then takes the third, I didn't do that. Well, what if I did that? That would be less economically focused, so that means he's less economically focused. So that just means that I have more, the longer the game goes, I have more resources. And you start understanding the game that way. And then think about it like this. Well, if my opponent's going to be really aggressive, what is a way I can deal with that that makes sense for me to do an economic focus but also be defensive? What if I just set up pylons around my base so I can spot where the aggression comes from before it happens, and I can maximize as much time as possible defensively to make as big of an army as I can? Because if my opponent attacks me and they're not making economy anymore, if their income is less than mine, for instance, like just hypothetically, if that's what happens, if your opponent doesn't go economic focus and you're worried about getting attacked, why is that? They have less economy than you. So you should be making more income than they do over time. And if you don't have a supply lead by the time they attack you, the real question would be why? Like, I'm not saying you have to have an army supply lead, but you should have an overall supply lead. That makes no sense. If a player has less economy than you, yet they have higher supply than you, like that just means that your macro needs improvement, because that's like saying that $20 can buy more than $50, and it can't.
Sure.
So then there's fundamental problems about your production and your upkeep of your base that needs to be improved from there. So that's a good way to read yourself, check yourself there. And then finally, it would be build yourself up over time like this. Try to really analytically read players, and you don't always have to do it in the middle of a game. You could definitely do it in replays, and just try to go back in the replay and go back to your perspective and be like, okay, let's go back to a certain point in the game when my probe saw something or when my hallucinating phoenix saw something, and let's try to understand what this means. And then you can you can stop it. You can hit everyone's vision and go, but does it make sense though with what he has? Like with the vision I give myself to what he actually has, how can I read these things? And again, you can also base it off of time, based off of what you have. So this is where people always freak out, and this is an example of what I mean. A lot of times when I play ladder, let's say I scout someone at 2 minutes and 20 seconds into their base. And let's say at that point in time, they had just finished a cybernetics core. And then people in my stream chat are like, Vibe, he's going DTs. He's got DTs. Why don't you have a turret up? What if he has DTs? And I'm like, bro, that can't happen for another 2 fucking minutes minimum, 2.5 minutes.
Right.
Things like this are things you should start committing to memory. So how do we know these things? Start trying to commit to memory. Build, for instance, look at his army. Go like this. Okay, go like this. He's got Thor. He's got tank. What does a Thor take? A Thor takes 43 seconds. What does a tank take? It takes 32 seconds. And what does he have? He has 3 factories. So for tech labs, that is. And now let's look at his army, and let's just say, how much units does he have here? Let your observers see it. This looks like it's about 12, 13 units. It's actually 13 units. So he has how many tech lab factories? He has 3 factories. So let's just average it off. Let's say it's 12 because 3 goes into 12 really easily. Nice and smooth. It's 4 times 3 is 12. So think about how long it would take him to remake this army. If we killed this army off of his current production, he would not remake this army if it was just going to be tanks for at least 2 minutes. And if it was going to be Thors, it'd be 2.5 minutes just to remake this army that would die right now.
Yeah, that was another question I had. At the end, do you think I could have won this game? Because it gets really close, and then I kind of just leave because I'm like, this is frustrating, and I think I lost.
I think at this point you're dead. But I think you could have won this game earlier here if you would have just used your Tempest and then sacked the base, and you didn't lose your whole army and then also all your probes. And then also right here, you could still win the game right now as well. But again, remember what we talked about? We'll talk about this still, but this is not the biggest takeaway you take away from this coaching lesson. Please don't let it be what I'm about to say, because if you let yourself get in situations like this all the time in Platinum, you're running into the same problem over and over and over that you're just not fixing. And if you're not going to fix the actual problem, you're going to be stuck in Platinum forever. So what's the actual problem? It's everything we talked about previously. It's all of your build. The fact that you are in a situation where the Terran has kept an equal supply to you with mech, and you are going for Gateway Immortal, is not good because Mech is an army that takes longer to make. Like, you should definitely have had more supply than him, and you also expanded faster than him. But then what's happened because of the result of like these cascading losses you've taken, you've allowed Terran now to be on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 bases with like 10 command centers. That's not ideal. Like this, you're like, that is very, very, very solid footing for Terran now to be in this game. He has got a lot of control in this game now, and this is now a mountain you have to overcome here. This is going to be a lot harder than just like, well, let's just not fall behind early. So Terran is way stronger than he should be. Now your army, what is your army? It's Tempest, it's Archon, it's Immortal, it's a Sentry, and it's a bunch of Zealots. What is his army? It's Hellbats, it's tanks, it's battlecruisers, and it's Thors. What is your production? It's 13 gateways, 2 robos, and 3 stargates. So your army doesn't have the biggest remax potential because the best thing you can make here for remaxing is gateway units, and gateway units are going to get demolished by someone who has a ton of tanks. Like if it's a hybrid of something, like charge lots would be your best bet, but if he has Hellbats and if he has Thors, it's going to be a little bit harder now for Zealots to like really get the job done because they're going to probably be in front of the tanks, which is going to make sure the tanks aren't killing each other. That's why Zealots are so good against tanks, is because they can make splash friendly fire and they charge into the unit so it splashes itself. So Zealot's good against tank, not so good against Thor Hellbat. Also not good at all against battlecruiser. So I would say your army has a bit of a problem because your army is very Zealot heavy. Your army has 21 Zealots, which is the majority of your entire army. I would say your Tempest and your Zealot is a bit of a spread evenly. And Tempest are good, but it's just a bit scary is all I can say for your overall composition. So if you take this fight, the best way I would say you could take this fight, this is probably the best thing you could do. Well, I'll show you as it happens. So he's pushing you, he's pushing you, he's pushing you. I would say if we were going to take this, how could we take this effectively with what we've given ourselves? And this is where micro comes in. If you just A move, you're going to get fucking demolished. So, because you put your
wait and send him the back.
So this is what I would say you should do. You should let your Zealots and your all your ground units kind of chill for a sec. Send your Tempest in. You should also definitely have a shield battery here if you could potentially have one, because that would be amazing too if you could overcharge a battery so your Tempest don't just get owned by Thor. But if you engage with the Tempest first, drag his Thors to the front, because what is he going to do? What's the Terran going to do if you attack him with Tempest? He's going to attack you with Thors, because he's not going to just sit there and watch his tanks die. So his Thors will come to the front of his army, away, like in the front, not in the back, but in the front of his army. And now if he's in the front of his army, then if you attack with Zealots, suddenly Zealots get all over the Thor. Tanks kill Thor, and then your Tempest could also ideally then overpower the battlecruiser, because you'd ideally have more than he does, and then you could potentially win this fight. This guy has a very, very heavy like his entire army can hit ground, but only some of his army can hit air. So the only way you're going to win this fight is if you prioritize your air. Like, your Zealots are not win this fight. Even if you killed all the tanks, you're not going to kill the BCs. So
sure.
do you have enough Archons to kill his BCs? You only have 2. You're definitely not going to kill 4 BCs with 2 Archons. He also has your Motto Cannon. He's giving you Motto them if you wanted to. So if you look at this composition and look at your composition, you should look at this and go, okay, well, air is my option to win here. The only way I win is if I make my Tempest win. So how can I best support them to do that? And it would be getting rid of the Thors by trading your Zealots out to kill them, and then suddenly now Tempest only got to worry about BC, and you do have enough Tempest to kill BC. And then your Tempest can kill all the Hellbats and tanks, because he can't hit air on that. So if you just engage with everything at once and your Zealots all die and his Thors still stay alive, and now your Tempest are trying to kill BC Thor, well, you're going to die, because there's no fucking way you're going to beat both BC and Thor with just the amount of Tempest you have. And then even further than that, if you allow your Tempest to also start shooting tanks while he's killing your Tempest with Thors, that's even further death right there. Because you're prioritizing killing his ground when you should be prioritizing killing his anti-air.
The anti-air stuff, okay.
So as you engage, you see how that first Thor just insta-died? Because the tanks just blew that shit up immediately? Now look at the other Thor. They're in the back.
Sure.
Now let's watch your Tempest. So they're shooting the BC, which is nice. They're shooting another BC, which is also nice. But now at this point, so you've killed 2 BCs with your Tempest, and you've killed 1 Thor with your ground army. But now the problem is that he, like, you could have done that either way. Like, his Thors were out of position. You could have killed the BCs either way. The way it just went. There was only 1 Thor in position, and what if you would have sent, like, only, like, 8 Zealots at that 1 Thor? You could have still killed the Thor just the same, as sending your entire army to die. But now that your entire army went in, you killed maybe, like, 1/4 of his tanks, but now your whole ground army's dead. And now, again, you have nothing supporting your Tempest anymore. So your Tempests are just naked now. And now what's he going to do? He's bringing his Thors over here to help his BCs. And he's going to start pounding your fucking Tempest with Thor BC. And now your army just starts plummeting to the ground here. And by the time you finally kill his last BC, half your Tempests are dead. And the Thors are still here. And Thors are more of a problem for Tempest than BCs are. So you really wanted to get rid of these Thors. That was the super important part here. And now that you haven't, these Tempests are just going to insta-die. They're very squishy, and they also take bonus damage versus Thors versus Massive. Thors versus Massive just destroy Tempest. And now, ultimately as well, because the fight was compromised in a bad way, what it ultimately did that do as well? It also means that now you not only lose this space, but you also lose this space because they're both exposed to his army now. So you're about to lose... you're about to lose 40% of your economy because you have 5 bases and you're losing 2 of them at once. So 40% of your economy is just going to die now. And it's even more than 40% of your economy if you really think about it, because this base is mined out. This base is also mining out. And these are good bases that you need with lots of patches that you now don't have access to. Meanwhile, you're fighting a Terran who still has 7 bases with 10 command centers. So this is a point of no return now.
Okay.
That fight set you behind. This fight sealed the deal and killed you.
Okay. So centralize army and build more shit.
I would say for the way you're reading games right now, don't build Tempest. Don't think the way to, because again, you're thinking about it way too hard. You're like, because again, this is what let me explain this really fast, and I'll go forward from this. The way I always talk about players who don't have flawless macro, if they don't have that yet, and they instead try to start playing the game at a higher level than what they're capable of, which is overthinking their opponent by rotating composition to counter that, where you go, okay, well now macro is no longer a factor for me anymore. Now I need to start thinking about how to rotate my army around to beat his composition. And everybody does it. Everybody does it. But if you didn't do it and you just went, I know I can max out faster than this, and I know I don't care what my opponent's making. It's either ground or air, and this game it's going to be mostly ground because he has a lot of factories. I'll just make some Stalkers into Charge the Archon Immortal, and I'm just going to attack him with maxed out Charge the Archon Immortal. I attack him, even if I don't break his army the first time, I can just, the second I go from a 200 supply down to 100, I immediately fly back up into 160 because I have a lot of production. So if he has 200 supply and he kills all my army down to 100 and I knock his down to like 140 in the process, if I remax into like 160, suddenly now I have supply lead, and if I take another fight again, I'll probably break him now at this point, and then I can remake my army again and do it again and do it again. And if because the thing is you're not thinking about anything, you're just maxing. But every time you, again, this is why I said you could do this in replays too. During a game, when you look at your opponent's base and you start thinking to yourself, what would beat this? Okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this, let's scout that, let's react to it this way, let's do this, let's do that. There should be no hesitation, and it just be split instantaneous thoughts of just going, yep. You like know what to do. And if you don't know what to do, you're not ready for it yet. You eventually have to progress into it over time, no matter what. But if you're not, if it takes you too long to just do the simple tasks because you're overthinking what you should be doing, you're putting yourself in a situation where it's going to, again, the only way you get out of it in an advantage is if you micro like a god. If you just know exactly, and again, do you know how to micro like a god? And if the answer is no there as well, these are things that,
no,
right? They just fuck you over again and again and again and again.
Okay.
So my ideal philosophy on the fundamental goal of what StarCraft 2 should be for you is you should get to a point where regardless of what's happening in the game, you can macro the same every time. So, and this is where I lose people all the time. Let me explain really fast. I feel like everybody can macro a passive game. Everybody can. Like, you could be like, well, this time I macroed great. I got to my ideal situation even a little bit faster than last time. And it's like, how much aggression happened throughout this game? Nothing. Okay, well, it was easy then to get to you had like no bumps in your road to get to where you wanted to be. But now let's say someone throws in a harassing unit, or let's say someone throws in an attack or a timing attack, or someone throws in some type of situation into the game where you start overthinking things, and now your macro, because something happened that was not just passive play, now your macro starts to slip a bit, and now suddenly you're like, okay, well, now I got to start microing my way out of these situations. And it's not true in Platinum League. It's really not. It's
Okay.
so much about just macroing. And because if you can't macro flawlessly, no matter what happens, it means your macro still needs improvement.
Okay.
And I would say, again, my overall opinion of just like it doesn't have to be exactly, oh, Diamond League is the exact thing. Everyone's different. So some people it might be like mid Diamond. Some people it might be honestly high plat. Some people it might be entry into Diamond. But there's something that clicks, I feel like, in people with how they play the game once they really understand this concept, which is as long as I prioritize my macro fast enough, you'll get to these points in your macro cycles frequently where you'll be like, I did it so fast, I can't do anything now. I did it so fast, I can't do anything now. I did it so fast, I can't do anything now. And then you fill in those gaps where you go, now let's do other things. Like now we can start thinking about what our opponent's doing. And now we can start thinking about how to react to that. And now I can start thinking about how I want to rotate my build. But you don't ever forget your next macro cycle. Like you don't, the second you start thinking about this shit, it's like you think about it for literally all of 5 seconds and you stop thinking about it and you go back into macroing again. And then the next time you finish a macro cycle, think about it for 5 seconds, go back into a macro cycle again. The problem that people have is they, as soon as they start thinking about other shit, they don't have that fall back out of it mindset. They get stuck into the mindset of like thinking about whatever they're thinking about for like 3 minutes or 2 minutes. And then the game just goes down this weird, deviated, inefficient path. And it's just gone.
Okay. Okay.
How do you feel? Is what I'm saying making sense?
Yes. No, what you're saying is making sense. I think that you say like the macro needs to be cleaned up more. I think I also get what you're saying too. I think it comes to me in like waves. Like I feel like I get like mini clicks, almost like 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Sure.
Or I feel like I'll get like, oh, okay, I get like what the macro thing means now. Like the probe thing for a while used to get me, and now I feel like I'm really good at like doing probes. Yeah. But I feel like it comes at the expense of like me building units.
Yeah.
So I feel like once I get both those down, then I think it just builds.
So I would say that this is the final way. I'll say something that I think will make a lot of sense and it'll be easy to consume. I think the best thing you can do for your army and your gameplay, besides making economy, would be every single game, do basic scouts just for the sake of going air or ground. And every single game, no matter what, go Archon Immortal. And then if it's ground, go Charge Lot. If it's air, go Stalker. And do that as fast as you can. And while doing that, slowly try to start putting the memorization. How much does this cost? How much does that cost? Supply-wise and resource-wise. And start trying to slowly build your understanding of like, if you look at an army and you can kind of, if I, for instance, if I look at this mech army right now, I can go, okay, if I had to guess, I would say this Terran army in front of my base with my observers at it, that army is probably worth about like 50 supply. And that army is also probably worth about like 4,000 or more, like, yeah, around 4,000, maybe 4,500 resources, somewhere in that range. Does it have to be perfect? No. Doesn't have to be. Nothing has to be perfect in this game in terms of like just playing ladder. Again, we're not like fucking Serral here. We're not BlizzCon pro gamers. But in general, it's this. Knowing that though, knowing that the ballpark of what this means is so huge because it helps you understand how to read a game. And like for instance, if you start paying attention to things, how much they cost, supply and resource and all that stuff, and you start then also paying attention to how much production they have, you can kind of calculate. Well, now it would be because his production sucks. It would be a great time now to go attack him after I won that fight. I would probably gonna win the game. Or what if you're like, sometimes you'll be like, well, now it doesn't make sense to attack him because what if I lost too much units there to make it seem effective to now go counterattack? Like again, it gets more and more and more advanced as you go. But just start committing actual numbers of this game to memory And this, what it also does to you is it goes, okay, how much, like, another thing would be like, what unit can realistically beat what unit? Like, how do my Tempest fare against Thor's? How do my Tempest fare against the other parts of his army? And you can look at your army, and you can look at his army and go, would this be a good or a bad fight? Again, I don't want you to think, I'm not trying to say this is what your focus is. Do it right now. The focus is just making Zealot Archon Immortal or Stalker Archon Immortal, whether he goes ground or air, max out as fast as you can, but start slowly building up your scouting and your game awareness of like what things actually mean. And once you get to a point where I guarantee if you get really fast at Stalker Immortal or a Zealot Immortal Archon, that's Diamond League for you right there. If you get good at doing that repeatedly, like with just solid macro. And then once you're in, like, once you're progressing through Plat, into Diamond and beyond, developing understanding of the game more, and now you can start actually understanding, like, okay, this makes more sense that I would make, you know, these units here instead of those. Or you know what it also
Immortals,
does to you? Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah, you know what it also does to you? The more you understand about the game, the more you genuinely understand about the game, the more you actually can understand about watching someone play the game. So if you understand more about what these units fucking mean, and let's say you go to someone's stream, let's say you watch like Mechanic or something, and he's like doing a build, and you're like, what the fuck? I didn't know that this disruptor was so good against that, and you you know, you start, you know, you don't just go, oh, disruptor good. You go, oh shit, I didn't know disruptors 3-shot a Thor. What the fuck? That's insane. And now suddenly you have this understanding of like, oh, three disruptors would be good against a guy who goes a pile of Thor. And things like that. Like it's you start actually paying attention to the numbers of what makes sense.
Sure, that makes sense.
So yeah, for now, again, just work on maxing fast. Don't overthink composition yet. Let that shit build up for yourself over time, and just try to understand the game better for yourself for now. And yeah, fix that macro. And in fixing the macro, the hardest part is to maintain it while multitasking. And that's where again a lot of people will drop off. But yeah. All right,
we're not supposed to multitask right now, right?
No, that's again something you build into. Like what you should be doing right now is just maxing fast repeatedly.
Maxing fast.
Because and again, if I was playing this guy, if this was like a viewer game, okay, if this was like, let's just say Solomon was like, hey Vibe, I just redeemed a fucking serious show match. I want to play your Protoss. And let's say he vetoes like fucking carriers and Tempest, and he vetoes all my Skytoss units. He's like, I hate Skytoss. I don't want to play against that. I am 100% confident I would smash this fucking guy with Charge Lot, Archon Immortal, starting off with like maybe 10 Stalkers, because I would out macro him. Because that's all I would focus on is macro, macro, macro. Aim move my armies into his face. Macro, macro, macro.
Okay.
And you could feel the same way if you focus on that as well. So, and yeah, this is the last thing I'll say, that I think we'll probably wrap it up. And then you can ask a question if you have one, because we're going for a fucking super long time.
Yeah.
And then fuck, I just lost my train of thought as I was saying that. God damn it. Yeah, I don't know. Macro good. It's super good, man. No, I remember now. I remember. Don't ever get complacent, okay? Don't ever get complacent with your macro, because that's the biggest fallacy everyone has at low levels. And any level they are, is they go, well, my macro's good now. And just know, me as a player who's capable of getting top 100 GM, I still think my macro sucks dick. It does. I could make it better in so many ways. I could do so much to multitask and also still maintain good macro. So you can always make it better. Even pro gamers think their macro is terrible. So don't ever be like, well, my macro doesn't need to be improved anymore. Always, every single game.
Always be improved.
Yeah, and no matter what, if you win or lose, always think, I could probably do that better. Because not only is it better by just making workers and making building time, but it's eventually going to be things like I can harass him and macro better. I can defend my base and macro better. I can multitask and macro better. That's what it becomes eventually. And it's so hard to do that.
That's fair.
All right, any questions?
No. I mean, I'll probably watch the video a couple times. Yeah. But, like, I feel like you got a lot of good, solid ideas about it. And I think, you know, like you said, like, people can get tunnel vision into, like, composition and stuff. But I feel like if I can just get good at maxing at like and reaching the benchmarks of your videos, that's something. And I think also when you hit platinum, just to really focus on what you say about scouting and things
Yeah.
like that, and I think it'll just click eventually.
Yeah, it'll definitely be a lot because I mean, if you're using 2021 Beta GM and you're using my silver videos to pace yourself in platinum, it's definitely not going to be the most ideal for you. It'll definitely help a lot
Right.
more when I'm actually in plat, giving you platinum pacing videos.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
in platinum, I'm going to be macroing pretty fast, so like much faster than
Okay.
silver. Because I do think platinum players, if uninterrupted, can handle most macro if they just know what to look at, which is how they're going to become a diamond player. But yeah,
Sure.
anyways, dude, thanks for doing a lesson. And yeah, I'll have this.
Sorry it took a little so long. I really appreciate the time.
You're all good, man. It's the least I could do. I fucked you over yesterday, okay? I still feel bad about that. You're like the first person I fucked
totally
over like
fine.
that in like a year. So, or like I don't even know. Like, I've
No
only done it like
worries.
3 times. But
Yeah.
much love,
Not a
dude.
big deal at all.
And
Yeah, appreciate it.
I'll see you on stream, and I'll thanks for doing it. And yeah, I'll message you on Discord as well tomorrow with the VOD of this.
Oh, sweet. All right, thanks, man.
All right, take it easy, man.
All right, you too.
All right, see ya. All right, guys. That has been another lesson with platinum level Equinox. But thank you guys for watching. I hope there was a lot of theory crafting in that. Like realistically, we talked about macro being the biggest focus there, and it really is. Like if you just don't make an army properly, there's suddenly so many more problems that you have that arise. For a simple solution, which is if you just macroed more, you would not have had these problems. Like here's an example. Okay, I'll give you guys an analogy to wrap up this coaching lesson on. Imagine if you were talking to one of your friends that goes, like let's say we're talking about driving a car. Okay, driving a car is an analogy, and let's say one of your friends who drives the same exact car you do, because again, StarCraft is the same for everybody. He drives the same exact car you do, and you guys have different conversations about. He's like, dude, I can't ever go to like this location or that location or it's really hard because every time I like when I didn't know what I was doing, I always ran out of gas because I wouldn't ever like turn the car off almost or like stop touching the gas pedal whenever I would go down a hill, and I would try to calculate it to where like I would even like lane merge and not hit the brake as often if I ever hit the gas too much so I could maximize my gas. And it's really hard to do all these things. Like he's trying to micromanage his car to like get distance out of it because he just doesn't put enough fucking gas in the gas tank. And you, as the other person who just macros properly, who puts enough gas in the fucking car, go, I don't run into any of these problems you're running into right now. I just don't experience them. I just hit the gas pedal and I just go and I just get from point A to point B and then I'm there. So, I mean, I don't know how to relate because I don't have these like hiccups all along the way. And these hiccups all along the way are when you stop macroing and you start thinking, oh, I can micro out of this. I can scout my way out of that. I can micro out of this. I can position myself over there for that. It doesn't matter. Those are so small if you just give yourself the right tool to get there, which is like, again, like enough gas in the gas tank. Like I just always, a lot of times whenever I coach people, I always hear so much how people overcomplicate the game. And I hear them it's like trying to solve all these equations and problems about how to do this and how to do that. And yes, those do exist later on. They do happen later on, which is why it's confusing. It's not like it never happens. But when you're in lower league, you're making problems even more exponential than they really are because it like, here's an example, okay? Another example. I'm not going to name a name, okay? I'm not going to name a name. But I watched a streamer one time who was Gold League, and this was a long time ago. This was like literally back in like 2013 or something. And this person was like Gold League working their way to Platinum League, and it was someone I knew. It was just a content creator, and I was watching them try to defend an all-in, and I literally thought to myself, you just don't build shit. I didn't say it in chat. I'm not gonna like, because again, no one really likes backseat gaming, myself included. I didn't backseat game this person. I would have offered help if they asked for it, but they never asked for it. They're trying to learn it on their own. But I watched this person identify a problem in their base that I saw. I was like, you just don't have enough. Like, you literally don't have any fucking units. Like, you can't defend this attack with, like, 2 units when you should have, like, 10. And they instead of realizing that, instead of going, oh shit, well I just didn't produce units, they went like repeated problem after problem. And they were like, okay, maybe if I actually tuck my units between my buildings here, I can hold it. Or you know what? I should pull my workers prematurely because I know this guy does this build. So I'm going to have one worker scout in the front. And when I see this setup, I'm going to pull all my workers and go. Because it seems like that's the only way you can beat this. And I'm just like, making another problem for yourself. You're making another problem for yourself. You're making another problem for yourself. If you just fucking macroed, it would all be fixed. You would never lose to it because it would show up and you would have enough units to actually kill it. It's not about how do you micro your way out of this. It's about did you macro properly up to that point? And people don't think about it that way so often. Anyways, yeah, I'm going to wrap it up now. Thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for watching. That was a little bit of a Vibu knowledge there.
Yeah.
Ultra Hugs, thank you very much for the sub. I appreciate you, dude. You're a fucking boss. But guys, thanks for watching. I will see you in the next one. And until then, take it easy. Much love. Have a good day or a good night. And I'll probably see you in Be the Gym or something. Later, guys. See ya.